Welcome to Let's Chat with Derick. I am your host, Derick Fage, and today's guest, well, he is originally from Ottawa, but he's in a place that I didn't expect to find him, quite frankly. He is live from Portugal with us here today. I am joined by Derick Smith, who is a community builder and an event host. You can find him at mrdericksmith.com. Derick, how are you?
I'm doing great. No complaints over here.
Excellent.
Feeling a little isolated, I'll be honest. But other than that, doing great. Yeah.
Excellent. Good to hear. I've been great, actually. I'm glad I got a chance to start something like this up because I think this is something that I'm so passionate about. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. So someone that's an extrovert and loves to be out in the community and hosting events and public speaking, this self-isolation thing hasn't gone well all the time. There are some wonderful things that have happened. I mean, just more family time and board games and puzzles. And, my brother bought me a PS4 online subscription so we could play hockey against each other. So that was a gift he gave to me, which was been a lot of fun doing that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I miss this human connection. And I was so happy when you reached out because you're one of those personalities that just, you're just a beacon of light, really. I mean, like, honestly, your energy, whenever you came on the show, your energy was amazing. And you've just had this incredible journey, Derick. So let's first of all talk about, what are you doing in Portugal?
Great question. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for even having this conversation with me because, frankly, I had nothing else going on today, so that's great. Yeah, what am I doing in Portugal? I've been here in Portugal for the better part of the last 9 months or so. I was living in Lisbon, building communities there for a couple different clients that I have, plus hosting a couple shows that had sort of brought me to Europe. My intention was to come to Europe and set up a nice hub so I could fly to different locations and be able to do my event stuff and build communities that way. And it had been working like gangbusters. And then suddenly 2 months ago, we all got thrust into quarantine. And I just so happened at that exact time to be on a little mini vacation. And I have not finished that vacation yet. I am, if you can believe it, I am in the Algarve right now in a hotel, and I am the only guest here.
No.
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
I'm not. It's actually, it's like something out of a movie. It's really cool, walking around in my slippers, like just, you know what I mean? I run the show. I'm the king around here. I don't know if that staff member really cares about me that much, but I am doing great. So
I'm crazy. So you mentioned, clients hire you. You've been traveling around the world and doing community building in what way? Can you describe that for me?
Yeah, for sure. As you can tell, I speak English. So when you travel around the world, it's very valuable to sometimes have English. And so people and organizations are always looking for like quality communicators who are capable of being able to communicate with people from around the world. So generally, I'm creating these communities for different organizations that have a English-based clientele. Okay. And so I found myself traveling to Mexico, to Thailand, throughout Southeast Asia. And then, like I said earlier, I found myself here in Europe. So I've been on the road for well over 7 years I've been traveling. So, and again, even when you and I met was actually probably in about 2007, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so and Ottawa being my hometown, that's where all my friends and family are. And so since then, since you and I have last seen each other, which I imagine was about a decade ago or a little bit less than that. I've just been traveling, building communities and sticking with my PR and communication strategy stuff, but somewhere along the line, and I think it has a lot to do with your influence, believe it or not, and that's why I'm so excited that I get a chance to talk to you, is that at some point someone handed me a microphone and they said, just talk. And so I did. And next thing I know I was getting gigs, hosting and emceeing and doing auctions, and I was doing a wide variety of things that just utilized my voice. And it has been, it's been a joy. And I thought to myself a long time ago, I'm like, well, this is not me. I mean, I have no broadcasting background. I have no experience doing such a thing. And I remembered how you working on your show with the fabulous TL back at Daytime Ottawa at Rogers, how you always just had this great beacon of light when you used to present, that I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll just, I got the same name as him. Maybe I could try to find a way to sort of do something similar. And so I like to think that you have been a big inspiration to me over the last few years, where I've been capable of sort of, again, using my voice to sort of build communities and sort of get myself out there around the world. So.
Oh, thanks, Dara. That's a great compliment. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Well, and I think you're like me. You're also very curious. You love people. You love to talk. And I've always said to people always say, "Oh, you must have interviews that are boring and you don't enjoy it." And I always explain to them, maybe there's a topic that you don't find very interesting, but people are interesting. And that to me was always the biggest, mindset I went into every interview with. If it was a topic that maybe I had very little interest in, I knew that that person across from me was interesting, because we're all unique, we're all different, and we love to communicate with each other. It's easier for some than others, but you take a lot of pride in making that person that maybe is nervous or feels uncomfortable and they're a little worried about, because I don't know if you remember, but the magic of that green room for Daytime Ottawa, when we were able to talk to everybody, and remember, it was like this great networking and everyone was supporting each other. It was, just an incredible atmosphere to be around.
And of course, the free coffee was always a nice treat.
Well, the Tim Hortons coffee certainly helped.
That was really nice of them. Yeah.
Do you remember when you came on the show and you were introducing a board game, and then you went across the country on some crazy journey, I guess, introducing this board game to Canadians? What you have to describe this. I know I have the board game, but I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It was a word game.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so let me tell the story first, and then I'll tell the board. If the story aligns, I'll tell the name, because otherwise, what I found out along the way was that what I did was I went into an organization in Toronto, and I pitched this idea to drive across Canada for 3.5 months in a large RV to promote their new board game. Much to my surprise, they gave me all thumbs up and said, "Go for it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, wow, this is amazing." So next thing I know, I am driving across the country, playing the board game with as many Canadians as I could along the way. And the name of the game, I will actually just say it, was You Don't Say.
Oh, that's
it.
And
it was the talk fast, guess faster game. And what I didn't realize, one of the byproducts of doing this, among other things, was I was getting in radio, television, I was getting into the newspapers, and I was doing that with my business partner at the time, Elise Goodhoof. She was awesome as well. Her and I went to the Olympics together. And
I remember that too.
Yeah. So it was a good year. We went to all sorts of fun, adventurous stuff. But what one of the byproducts was of playing this game with so many people for those 3.5 months is that, unbeknownst to me, I began to speak faster and faster and faster and faster, to the point where by the time I reached Vancouver on the other side of the country, I just coincidentally Googled who is Canada's fastest talker, and it turns out she was living in Vancouver. So I drove over to her house and I played the game with her, and to be quite honest, I beat her. So It turns out that I am the unofficial fastest talker in Canada. But a lot of people have said that since, and years after, especially when I was doing more and more interviews, more on-screen stuff, people were suggesting, maybe you should slow down a bit. You talk a little fast. So really all I'm ever doing is just trying to constantly slow my voice down.
That is very interesting. We have that in common, because in my first year of doing daytime, our producer at the time, Amrita, she asked me to slow down. I guess it's because I have a lot of energy and I would get excited to talk to people, but I would talk, at a crazy pace. And she was like, you should try to. And I actually went to a woman that does, drama and theater, and she teaches workshops and so forth. And I asked her if she could help me with this, and she taught me how to slow down my speaking. And one of the biggest things was, she found that when people talk fast, we use filler. So that's when the ums and the ahs and so forth seem to come into people's conversations, or when you have little ticks in your speech. But if you slow down and you allow for, short pauses, and you talk, slowly, and, articulate properly, it becomes easier, especially for the viewer, right, to enjoy a conversation more. So I took that to heart. I was like, okay, no, I'm going to actually pay, somebody to help me out.
Right. Yeah. My brief instantly when people began to say it to me, I would think they'd always be like, you're speaking too fast. I was thinking to myself, well, you're just thinking too slow. Then I realized, no, maybe there's something to it. Maybe I should slow down a bit. So yeah, that's what that board game brought me.
That's
Fast talk.
amazing. So
Yeah.
tell me about the type of events that you're putting on when a client, hires you. What sort of event? Are you doing game shows? Like what is it like?
Well, one of the ones that I like, one of the ones that I actually pride myself on, and something that actually is kind of I would say one of the great joys in my life, is Friday nights. I do this whenever I find myself in a new city. In general, people will always say, oh, is it hard for you to meet people or to make friends or whatever? Generally, what I will do is I'll go find a venue.
Okay.
And even if I don't have a client, even if I'm just in a city, I'll go find a venue and I'll put on an open mic night. And that just gives me an opportunity to host an open mic night. But the open mic nights are generally like a music, poetry, storytelling, comedy, anything they want, 5 minutes or less. It's just like an excuse for people to play and have fun on a Friday night. And the events always have such great energy behind them. And even when there's like, maybe there's only like 10, 20 people in the audience, like a low audience, some form of magic will present itself in the 2 to 3 hour open mic event that takes place, that it always just kind of warms my heart. And then afterwards people come up to me and be like, oh, you got to do this again. And that's generally how, when I enter into a city, I'll always make friends very quickly. And it's always the types of people I want to spend time with anyways, which are musicians, poets, storytellers, comedians, like the types of people that kind of have a little bit of creativity in them. So that's like among one of the types of events I do. And then the other types of events is just like, like hosting whatever's required. And I was mentioning earlier, like even like auctioning and stuff like that. I'm not the auctioneer despite my fast talking, but I do the hosting. And I
was going to say, you could do it.
It's funny you say that. I know you can do it, but I know that like I watched some videos on YouTube of auctioneers, and even I was like, I don't know if I got that, you know what I mean?
No,
like,
but you can find your own style, right? I mean, you don't have to do like I watch a lot of the DIY shows and the Cottage Network and so forth, and they have these shows like Texas Flip and Move, right? And you'll get like the Texas auctioneer, and it's actually fascinating if you really listen carefully, because it's absolute gibberish. Some of the stuff that he does. He's like, two down, two, I got two, I got 22, 22, like he's not saying anything. I turned to Monica. I'm like, what is this guy? He's like complete gibberish, but I guess, that's his style, right? And he's got that Texas accent too. But I think you can find your own style.
Yeah, I just got to be able to count, I guess, right? So that's the trick. But I'm sure there's a little training I could use. I definitely got the talk, like the fast talk. It's just a matter of keeping those numbers going and making sure I don't slip up. But yeah, that kind of event. And I mean, just a wide variety of other sort of just like variety shows, comedy shows. Actually, when I first grabbed the microphone, this was in Thailand, a friend of mine had suggested, have you ever heard of an organization? I don't know if it's an organization, but it's something like Toastmasters.
Oh yeah, of course.
Toastmasters, somebody said like, oh, you'd be really good at public speaking. You should go to Toastmasters. And I was about to head to a Toastmasters event. I think it was like the following night at 8 p.m. And somebody said to me like, you know what, why don't you just come to my event tonight and just do a quick stand-up set? I bet you'll learn more from doing stand-up than you would from there. I'm not here to judge Toastmasters. I've actually never been to a Toastmasters because I didn't go that night. I went to the stand-up event and I did stand-up. And when I got laughs, I was just like, oh yeah. Like, okay, this is my new job. And so like, after that, it was just sort of like doing stand-up events and stuff like that. And essentially always trying to come up with new material. And that's the one thing I kind of pride myself on, is that I don't generally do the same thing twice. So I always do something different each time, which is a little bit extra pressure, but I'm not working material.
Well, that takes a lot of talent. I mean, like some of the best comedians in the world, they do a lot of the same. I mean, it looks like it's coming off the top of their head, but they practice over and over again. Even the dramatic pauses that they use, that comes into play. Even some of the interaction that they do with the audience, they know there's an expectation, right, that they're going to get a certain response from the audience. So, man, I bow to you, because I've done stand-up comedy. I did I would say about a half a dozen shows at Yuck Yucks in Ottawa when I was much younger, and I just couldn't deal with the anxiety. I was having panic attacks.
It's because there's also like going to a strict comedy show. People are there because it's comedy. So what they're expecting is to laugh. So I definitely would prefer to go do comedy at a variety show because they don't, there's no expectations set.
Right.
So, I mean, whatever, that's my little trick. So that way, at least I still get laughs, but they don't have this strong expectation that I'm really going to make them laugh. So yeah, that's how I get away with that one.
Derick, I imagine, like many people, the pandemic has had an impact on your business. I mean, you're staying in a hotel by yourself as the only client in the entire hotel. So, you know, what are you doing now? I mean, have you been able to find an avenue where you could continue to do what you're great at and what you love to do?
Yeah, actually, I have been. I don't know how else to say it other than I don't think anyone on earth was more prepared for isolation than I was. And I'll say why.
Okay.
In June of 2019, less than 1 year ago, I took the entire month off and I actually locked myself in my house. I was living in Thailand at the time in a very beautiful property, very large, but I never once left the property for well over 30 days. I got groceries delivered. And what I did was, every single day, I woke up and I followed the exact same routine. I'd wake up, I'd go for a run, I'd come home, I'd shower, brush my teeth, scrape my tongue, go downstairs, put on some coffee, make some breakfast, sit down at the table, eat the breakfast. And then while I was eating breakfast, I would open an envelope. And the envelope was created by a friend of mine. And in the month of May, like a couple weeks before, we had sat down and I had listed off all the things that I would want to do if I had nothing but free time to do it. And so she stepped away and she randomized these schedules and broke down each day a calendar of the activities I would do that day by myself. So it was broken down to 1 hour, 15-minute, and 5-minute increments. And so like even one of these, I'll actually still travel with like one of these calendars, right?
Okay.
And in them has just activities. So at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, do some jumping jacks, or like, you know, at 3 o'clock, do some writing and recording. At 4 o'clock, do sit-ups, like whatever it was. I was capable of just sort of filling my entire day. And much to my surprise, when the 30 days were all over of isolation last year, I could have done another 30 days. I could have done another year.
Really, eh?
Of that activity. So fulfilling, because it just was all, I mean, it was self-focused activities for sure, but it was the exercise, it was the meditation, it was the activities that just simply were nourishing my insides. And what the intention was to build new habits, which I definitely did build new habits. And then I found myself maintaining those habits leading up until suddenly the global pandemic hit. And when it did hit, I was like, oh, sweet, I get to hang out this hotel and sort of do it all over again. 1 second, let me just dust off my schedule and I'll be ready to go. And so like every day.
I think this is a great idea for everybody to try to do. If you put that down right on paper, I mean, we've heard it many, many times before when it comes to goals, but even just daily activity, you're more inclined to do it, right?
For sure, yeah, definitely. And it made it a little bit easier. And it also made me feel as though, because that friend of mine put the envelopes together, it was a surprise for me. So I could like,
Right.
I really didn't know what the day held, but I knew whatever I was going to do was my choice and stuff that I love to do. And so I've been able to just sort of do that over the last, I don't know, I think we're on I think I've been in isolation now for about 53 days. And so I've been doing that since then. And it's great because, I mean, it's quiet, I'll give you that, but it's not that bad. For me, it's just like, well, I'm getting a little healthier and stuff like that. And so even my clients and the people that I'm working with, and everyone, and I imagine I'm not the only one, but a lot of people, of course, are on hold right now. We're on pause. And I imagine at some point, they're going to tell me to leave the hotel. And then I'm going to find my way back up to Lisbon, you know? And yeah, so in the meantime, what I have been doing is reaching out to people. That's essentially why, again, you and I have reconnected here, Derick, because I mean, I want to reach out. I want to just express to a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years that like, more than ever, my voice is available. I want to make sure that whatever I use my voice for in this new world that we live in, it's going to be something that will benefit people. Not that what I was doing was not benefiting before, but I feel like that term new world is what we're about to enter into. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that I'm making the right choices. So I've definitely been connecting with a lot of former colleagues, a lot of mentors, and making sure that my voice is going to get used in the right ways.
Nice. And do I understand it right? You're doing something on Friday nights at 8 o'clock? Tell me about this. You're doing a little open mic thing. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So similar to what I was describing earlier, that open mic, when I arrived in Lisbon, they gave me a stage, and then that every week, every Friday night, we put on this open mic, and the community began to grow and grow and grow and grow. And then when the lockdown happened, it was sort of like, well, what do these people do now that Friday's not happening? So I did exactly what you would imagine. I flicked it online, and the next thing you know, we're now hosting an online open mic every Friday night. And whereby before I might have been a minor local celebrity, now I've gone global. So now we have people we have people from all around the world that join in on the open mic. And one short little quick story was that, I had never in a million years thought I would ever be hosting an open mic online. And that first show that we did, it was like, okay, camera on. I started doing a little introduction, and then I called out the first performer, and that first performer grabbed a guitar. And before the first note hit, I was like, and then sure enough, the first strum of the guitar came through the speakers. And I was like, oh, this is going to work. And then sure enough, we have now been we've done 7 or 8 shows since I've been on lockdown. And it's been great. It's just been a great way to reconnect with people or maintain connection with people. So that way, when the time comes and we return back to normal, we'll have the community will still be in play, and people are really thankful that we're able to give them that platform to express their creativity.
So how can we get involved? How can we watch? How can we participate?
Well, I would gladly give you the link after we discuss here, and we're going to definitely post that up somewhere. But it takes place 8 p.m. every Friday, GMT +1. So I guess that's Portugal time, which essentially means I think about 3 o'clock your time on Friday. So if you're in the house, it would be a great time for you to come by and Again, the idea is like, no one's a professional at these open mics. The idea is just to express yourself. So maybe you have a poem, maybe you have a short story that you want to tell, maybe you have a song to sing, something like that. It's never intended to be hard professionals, but we definitely get some very talented people that come through there. And
which I think is great, right? Because some of us, some people that are creative, they don't have a platform, right? And they want to share it. And, I think this is even a great start too. If you're sort of an extrovert and maybe you're a little shy of getting up in front of a live sort of studio audience or, on stage at a club or something, this may be the opportunity for you to sort of introduce yourself and get a little bit more comfortable, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. And it's funny because when even right now we're on a Zoom room, we have both our microphones on, but when you have a group of like 100 people in a Zoom room at a time, not all the microphones are on. So it's really hard to get some of the feedback. So what we were capable of doing, I think on like the second show, I realized we're going to need to determine some kind of nonverbals. So we teach people at the beginning of the show, like show nonverbals through the camera like this to make sure people know that you like what they're doing. And I think that's how the energy exchange takes place over the online version. But I'll tell you one thing. You can imagine the day I get to go touch a proper microphone again in front of a live crowd will be a glorious day.
Oh yeah, watch out, world.
Yeah, watch it. Yeah, exactly. I got some great material. Yeah.
So how long do you expect yourself to? I mean, beyond, of course, the pandemic situation, how long did you expect yourself to stay in Portugal?
Great question. I mean, it still is seemingly what I would like to be doing. I'm really enjoying the country. The people are amazing. The food's great. I intended to be here for the duration of 2020. Of course, everything's sort of up in the air right now. The 2 days before, 2 days after we went into isolation, my parents were supposed to come visit me here in Portugal. I haven't seen them in over 2 years, which is too much because I'm really close to my parents. So for them to not come is well, is it time for me then to just ship myself back so that way I come see the family again, because it's strange times right now. So to some degree, we're still kind of working it day to day to see sort of where I'm going to be best suited in 2020. So, I day to day, and for now I am going to enjoy my private hotel.
I love it.
I just, to be quite honest, Derick, I don't know which hammock I can sit in today. Which hammock should I go sit in?
That's a toughie. That's a toughie.
Yeah, it's a tough time.
I'm almost jealous in a way. I mean, what a cool experience for somebody to go through. You think about, some of the negative things, but to have this story to tell people, it's almost worth it for you, right?
And I imagine I'm not the only one with a phenomenal story of what's taken place during this time. Because again, some people have found silver linings of what's going on, and I think you and I were even discussing it a little bit earlier. But my heart goes out to some of those people who have found themselves outside of the terrible things going on. There are some scenarios that I can imagine people never expected to find themselves in, like living with a whole slew of new family members, or, hey, by the way, we need to adopt all these dogs during this time. And so I'm sure some people are really living in some interesting scenarios. And I look forward to reading the Table Coffee book after it's all said and done, to read what people have been going through over this time. And I think even something like what you're doing right now, where you're actually communicating with us, with people, you're kind of getting a few of the stories of what people are going through around the world.
Yeah,
So,
one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, just to connect, and so that people have an understanding of, there's other people like you in the same situation. They have the same feeling, whether it's positive or negative. All of these stories help connect each other, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, my friend, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for reaching out. It's so great to see you after all these
It's
years.
really great to see you too, Derick. And I will say one more time, I know I mentioned it during this, but you did have a significant role in sort of what has led me to this, because I never kind of assumed that I would ever be using my voice as a means to sort of help me travel around the world and build communities like I do. The one reason that I even realized it was possible, 2007, I was working for an organization called Andy Camper. I don't know if you remember this,
I
right?
do.
And so once a month, we would come into your show at Daytime in Ottawa. And about once a month, we'd come in, we'd do a segment. I wouldn't do the segment. I'd just be the assistant there, right? And everyone would always say like, hi, Andy, hi, Andy, hi, Andy. And I'd just wave back, knowing very well that my name was Derick. And then as time progressed, and we would come all the time, there was one day where you were maybe on vacation or maybe you were ill, and TL came up to me and she said, is there any chance you would like to help co-host and come in on Friday and co-host with me? Never in a million years did I think I could ever do that. And then sure enough, that Friday I did sit next to TL on live television, doing a cooking segment and doing a wide variety of things. And I watched the footage afterwards and I'm like, I wasn't perfect, but I definitely wasn't that bad. And that was 13 years ago. And now look at me, I'm still kind of doing it. So that was, I kind of was your mini Derick, your little Derick, you know what I mean? And I'm very happy that I got that opportunity.
Well, and you couldn't have worked with a better person. I mean, TL is, she's just an absolute pro, and just makes you feel so comfortable. That's what I said, to you earlier. Just the atmosphere there from everybody, from the supervising producer all the way down to the co-op student, high school co-op student. And then that's another thing that was magical. You'd have a high school co-op student working beside a retiree of 70 years old who just wanted to do something different to get out and socialize, and it just made it such a great atmosphere. It just shows
it's a real cool safe space to like get you like really kind of figure out what you're good at. And I was also reminded in 1996 I was a cameraman in that studio for a brief time, during like the Tom Green days. So it's kind of like that studio. Apparently I spent a lot of time there, which I was surprised when I reflect on it.
Well, what a great stepping stone, right? That's why I've always said community television still has a place. It's so important to so many people's career. You see how many people, their careers launch from community television. And if you ask people, what's important to them, it really is, finding out what's happening in their community. Well, buddy, that's it for me. I will let you go, get you back to enjoying your hotel. And again, MrDerickSmith.com, everybody, to find out more information. Take care, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much, Derick. I appreciate you telling me.